All right, welcome folks to this quick severe weather coverage that we have as storms are approaching the North Texas DFW counties. We have quite the significant storm just to our west. We have a lot going on. Severe thunderstorm watch now in effect until 4 in the morning. That includes all of DFW and areas to the east. Now, I am kind of surprised that we didn't have this watch issued for us earlier because we have storms basically on the doorstep of North Texas. So we have a watch now. Make sure that you're staying weather alert. If you're in Dallas County, if you're in Tarrant County, you have some time. If you're in Fort Worth, there's some heavy rain now, but if you're out and about and you can get home within the next 10 minutes or so, I recommend just making sure that you can find shelter as these storms move in. These are pretty nasty, and I don't say that lightly. Notice just a little bit ago when we had this warning within a warning, there's this bow segment that is currently arching through portions of Hood and Parker County, and that means significant winds. Let's actually show you. This has been capable of producing up to 80-mile-an-hour winds. Now, notice those bright colors as this was moving through northern Hood County and southern Parker. This was a significant storm. The good news is, at the moment, we're seeing temporary weakening with this, almost like it's kind of just bowing out and it's gusting out. But there is still some significant winds with this, and I need to stress enough. Aledo, Benbrook, Willow Park, Azle, y'all are next in line for this storm. Azle may not get all of the significant winds, but there is still going to be probably some gusty winds within the southern sides of it. But Aledo, Willow Park, and Benbrook, you need to be seeking shelter indoors. Treat it like it is a tornado, just because, to put in perspective, an EF0 tornado is typically around 80 miles an hour. So if this storm is producing 70 to 80 and it's widespread, it could cause some pretty significant damage. Now, right now, it doesn't look like we're seeing the 80, but I still think there could be some isolated gusts of up to 80, maybe even 70 at the minimum of what's happening here. So 65, 70, 75, 80 is possible with this. New severe thunderstorm warning also for portions of Johnson County, Hood County, Erath County, and I believe Hamilton County, Bosque County. So we have this activity. There's a lot of strong winds. In fact, there's another pocket moving into Glen Rose that looks pretty strong there too. So what we're watching with this is a fairly significant complex of storms moving into the area. And we need to be watching this very closely, because notice just how close this is to the Metroplex. If you're watching and you're north of Tarrant and Dallas County and you're wondering, there's a lot of rain, am I next in line for any of these storms? Right now, Wise County, Montague, Cook, and Denton, McKinney, not McKinney, that's not the county, but Collin County where McKinney sits, and Grayson County, there really is nothing severe going on, just rain across the area, light rain in Cook County, Grayson County, Denton, and Collin County, but the bulk of the activity is going to be moving into portions of the Metroplex, mostly Dallas and Tarrant County. Unfortunately, that is some of the most populated areas. We have quite a bit of activities going on. Mayfest closed about an hour ago, so I know that. There was some Cinco de Mayo events in western Tarrant County, portions of Parker County. Those have all been canceled. And we've got just a lot going on. These storms are going to be pretty nasty, folks. And take it from me, I don't like spurring any sort of storm anxiety from these. Take it from someone who grew up with that. We give you this information because we need you to be alert of the fact that there are some pretty significant storms moving into the area. Now, fortunately, like I said, it doesn't look like that 80-mile-per-hour wind risk is occurring. I'm actually kind of shocked that there is not a severe thunderstorm warning for Tarrant County, including Fort Worth, because that bow segment is outside of it. So you're not in a warning right now for Aledo and Benbrook and White Settlement, but these three communities right here need to be indoors and away from windows now, because these are still quite strong winds. We're clocking up to almost 65 with some of these scans, and like I said, it's not for a tornado. In fact, you might hear the portions of Parker County were sounding sirens earlier. That was not because of a tornado. A common misconception with outdoor sirens is they are exclusively for tornadoes. The fact is, sirens are kind of a weird tool that we use. And the reason I say it's weird is people think it's just for tornadoes. No, it is basically any sort of threat to life or property. Wind, hail, tornado, you name it, that's when they go off. And the thing is, they're not sounded by the National Weather Service. So some communities may sound them, some communities may not. It's basically up to the discretion of a couple of people with the Office of Emergency Management whether or not your community sounds it. So if some of the Office of Emergency Management leaders in your community decide that this is hazard enough to be eligible for sounding the sirens, some communities might air those for 70-mile-per-hour winds. So that's what we've got going on here. And I'm going to actually check real quick and see when that other alert is in effect until for Hood County. And this one is in effect, excuse me, for, we're looking at some tools behind the scenes here. The one to the south, that is Somerville County, which I believe is our last county to the south. It's for Somerville, Erath, Johnson, Bosque, and Hood counties, and that is until 10:45. And I apologize for the brief quiet period there. We are uploading these alerts to our mobile app, so if you haven't already downloaded our mobile app, make sure that you do. We send out these alerts, and you can see the alerts for yourself, the full text, everything like that, just by clicking on it. I tell you what, I am really shocked that we don't have a new warning from the Weather Service in Fort Worth for this as this moves into Fort Worth. We don't typically do this because I don't like when other pages issue these hyped warnings, especially when it comes to tornadoes or whatever. But this is not a tornadic threat. This is a significant wind threat with up to 65, 70-mile-per-hour winds. We're just going to issue a temporary alert on our behalf, and this is for Western Tarrant County. And I don't say that to hype this up. There's a lot of people out and about, and we just want to make sure that everyone is completely aware. This isn't to overhype it. This isn't to, stir fear or anything like that. If you're in southwestern Tarrant County, you need to be indoors, away from windows, because this is going to be 65-mile-per-hour winds, maybe even 70-mile-per-hour winds with some of these areas within the storm. And just be indoors. There's this little bow segment that we see here. It's not as intense as it was earlier, but we just want to make sure you're not caught off guard by this. You're not outdoors. 60, 70-mile-per-hour winds are quite nasty, and we just want to make sure that you are fully aware of that. Glen Rose, there's another pocket of some pretty strong winds. That is actually clocking up to 74 mile per hour right in this little blue pocket. So if you're in Glen Rose, you're going to get some strong winds here momentarily, and not really seeing any sort of updates. Today's been kind of a weird day in the weather realm. We don't have a whole lot of people seeing these. There's a lot of precipitation. Some of the stations that usually report some of these things out to the west are not really working like they typically do. And we've seen some segments where we had that weird little lull in time where there wasn't a watch for the Metroplex until last minute. We're not questioning anything that anyone does. It's just a busy day. It's just a kind of an odd day, to say the least. And, we're just going to get through this as we make it through the rest of this evening. So let's go back and look at this. Again, if you're in Western Tarrant County, be ready for 60, 65, maybe even some 70-mile-per-hour winds. This is approaching Aledo. It's already over Aledo right now, in fact, Benbrook, and this will be approaching probably the northern sides of Crowley. This should be in Fort Worth. We're going to look at kind of a timing tool that we have behind the scenes here and actually check if we can get that up and running. I will check and see when that will be. Let's see. So if it's right here, this is moving to the northeast at around 24. This will be in Fort Worth around 10:30-ish, according to the radar. So this should be in Fort Worth around 10:30. Again, we're starting to see this outside of the warning area. So I'm curious to see if the Weather Service actually issues an additional warning for this. I think they should, just because we're still clocking some strong winds with this. And another thing that we're watching is this storm now near Glen Rose, and that one is also capable of up to 70 mile per hour winds, just because the radar is looking quite impressive with that. To put into perspective, basically green is moving towards the radar and red is moving away from the radar. So those bright greens turning blue, that is indicative of some pretty significant winds in that area. And I think that there's going to be easily 60 to 65 mile per hour winds, maybe even 70, just because we are closer to the radar site. Still looking a ways up. Not as bad as we are further to the west. This is about 3,000 feet up, but translating to the ground, that's probably 65, 70 miles an hour. Looking at some tools off to the side and any sort of reports. Not a whole lot coming in here. Another thing that we're going to look at real quick, if I can find, we'll go to our hail core tracker. Excuse me. There we go. And yeah, there might be another thing that we're watching is this one might be trying to come back to life. And what I mean by that is the hail core, we're getting closer to the radar. This hail core is looking a little bit more impressive than it was earlier. And earlier, this was talking more of penny-sized hail. Now, keep in mind, look at the radar, and this is just a quick little lesson with radar interpretation, is the radar is indicating about 2-inch hail loft. The warning does not mention hail whatsoever. And one thing that we have to keep in mind, the radar is scanning into the storm. We are at the hottest point of the year so far. We've had temperatures in the mid to upper 90s in some areas. We're still sitting, I believe, in the upper 80s right now. In fact, I'm going to actually, behind the scenes, check exactly what the temperature is here. If I can get that. And I'll check to see what the exact temperature. Yeah, so the temperature in these areas, we're still in the 80s. So keep in mind, there is a warming period in the lower level of the atmosphere. So as this hail falls, it's going to be larger aloft because it is being suspended up there, but it starts to melt as it goes further and further down closer to the surface. With that being said, if the radar is estimating about 2-inch hail this close, I'm thinking that we're going to easily start to see some quarter-sized hail with this. In fact, they may even update that warning here shortly. They went ahead and canceled that warning moving into Tarrant County. I want to be mindful of that, and like we said, we don't want to create any sort of overhype or fear with this. But radar is still estimating fairly close to the radar site. This is showing almost 63 mile an hour winds just west of Benbrook. So we cannot let our guard down with this. I think that there could easily still be some strong winds moving into western Tarrant County. So while there is no warning for the time being, we're going to have to be watching if that starts to spike up again, especially since it's already showing severe level winds again. That could easily reach severe levels once again. To put into perspective, in order for a storm to be eligible for severe criteria, we need hail of 1 inch in diameter and winds exceeding 57 miles an hour. And if we already have 60s kind of showing back up there, they may have to issue another warning with that. Going down to the south, near Glass, Chalk Mountain, and Glen Rose, radar still showing up to 65 mile per hour winds with this. This is still a pretty substantial storm. And if you're in the community of Glen Rose, Glass, and Rainbow, you're going to want to be indoors and away from windows. Another reminder, too, if you're in a mobile home and you're ahead of this storm, make sure that you seek shelter in a sturdy building, because 65, 70 mile per hour winds can easily damage or tip over an RV, or damage or tip over a mobile home trailer, whatever it is. If it's not built into the ground with a sturdy foundation, winds of 65, 70, 80, those can easily cause damage, not only to mobile homes, but even regular buildings as well that are built on a sturdy foundation. So it's not anything to mess with. It is equal, when we get into the 75 to 80 mile per hour winds, it is equal to a weak tornado. So we're watching that very carefully. Let's see. Are they going to see, is there a new update? I heard we have a little chat session off to the side, and this gives us reports. And right now, 50. Okay, so severe wind was recorded at Granbury. That was that was about 5 minutes ago. And Granbury reported a 57 mile per hour wind. So, like I said a second ago, winds exceeding 57 miles an hour are what is needed for severe criteria. So we are technically seeing severe winds occurring in the Granbury area. Glenrose looks to be a little bit more substantial with that. Eastland County, this was from earlier, reports from the public were 1 inch hail. That was a while ago. Yeah, not a whole lot of information. I'd like to give viewers a little bit more info to go on with these. Unfortunately, it's nighttime, it's a weekend. We really don't have a whole lot of people out looking at these either. Even for a storm chasing perspective, there is another setup further to the north in Missouri with a risk for tornadoes in Missouri, and there's a lot more chasers up there than there are down here. So not a lot of people to see these as they're occurring. Fortunately, let me show you the last scan. That is a little bit of a sigh of relief. The winds seem to be calming down with the velocity moving into Glenrose. So that's some good news there. Not going to let our guard down because there's still little pockets of it here and there to the north and south of Glenrose. These are going to be exceeding 65 mile per hour. In fact, the one that is just to the south of Chalk Mountain, this is recording about a 73 mile per hour wind based off radar. So we're watching that very carefully. Let's go back up to the one in Tarrant County. And it's not quite severe limits, and that's some really, really good news because that was looking like a pretty concerning storm moving into Tarrant County. It's weakening. It's continuing to weaken. Still watching. There's still some pockets of some strong winds, but I tell you, it's not as concerning as it was earlier. Even a couple minutes ago, like I mentioned here, kind of a little burst, if you will, maybe even a last-minute hurrah with this storm. We were seeing 63 mile per hour winds in some of these areas in this little blob there, and now that looks to be weakening pretty good. So a lot to talk about. Fortunately for the Metroplex, not a whole lot. I am thinking 40, 45, maybe 50 mile per hour winds are likely as this moves into Tarrant County and the Fort Worth community. So if you're in those areas, make sure that you are seeking shelter indoors just because, wind and rain, not fun. There's also a lot of lightning with this as well. That report just coming in for the 55 mile per hour wind. That was from Hood County and Granbury. That's what we mentioned a second ago. And I'm curious to see if they go ahead and update this, if that hail core continues. And it's still there. It's not as major of a hail core as what we've seen with some of these storms so far this week, but it is still noticeable. If you're in D. Cordova and Pecan Plantation, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe some nickel-sized hail, maybe even some quarters mixed in, are starting to fall in that area. So, like I said, I wish there was a lot more that we could go into and give you some better reports, but right now there's just not a whole lot to talk about, not a whole lot of people seeing these. Not a whole lot of stations either recording the winds, so usually we get some more of these reports, but unfortunately tonight doesn't look like that is the case. All right, so we're also watching storms just to the west near Eastland, and these are not as significant, but we'll have to be watching these over the next couple of hours as they make their way closer to the Metroplex, just because these may also pose that damaging wind risk over the next little bit. Let's actually go. I'm going to check out the terminal Doppler site. See if we can get a reading on some of those winds coming into the Metroplex. And not quite there yet for a good reading. So we'll go back to Fort Worth. Oh, wow. I didn't even see that earlier. This is from storms well earlier. I'm just going to zoom in on this real quick and just show you just how lucky we are that we're not seeing this. This was from much earlier today. We did a live update earlier, and we showed you those storms down near Brownwood when storms are starting to develop. And someone reported a three and a quarter hailstone, so 3 inch or 3 inches and a quarter size hailstone. That is larger than a baseball. So that would be very nasty to deal with. Fortunately, we're not talking about that major hail risk down here. We're primarily dealing with a damaging wind threat here at the moment. So let me boot up another one of our tools. I'm kind of looking behind the scenes at some of these things just to see if there's any sort of details that we need to mention on. Because right now the winds are still pretty strong in Hood County, but at the moment it's not what it was earlier. So these are probably easily 60, maybe some gusts of 65, but not what we were looking at earlier with that Parker County storm and the 70-mile-per-hour winds. So Hood and Erath County, we're talking 60 to 65 in some spots. Just to the east of D. Cordova, that might be some 60 with some gusts up to 65. But fortunately, not the 80-mile-per-hour winds that we were looking at earlier with some of these storms. We're trying, let's see. See if we can get a 3D scan of this just to see how tall. And these are pretty tall storms. It wouldn't surprise me if these might start to develop kind of a hail core with it, especially near the Godley area, just to the west of Godley. We're starting to see that hail core coming up some. And looking at a little area, little pocket of strong winds over Crescent. So not a whole lot to talk about right at the moment. If you're in a warning, it is mostly for 60 mile per hour winds, 60 to 65, and maybe even some nickel-sized hail. Other than that, for the rest of the Metroplex, we don't have a whole lot going on at the moment. We're going to be keeping a very close eye on this. We're going to throw it back into the live weather loop. We have to look over some things. Make sure, if you're tuning in on Facebook, just because we've been having some issues with it, find us on Amazon Fire TV. You can also watch us live on the Weather 225 mobile app. We'll do a quick update here in just a little bit, but we're going to look over some things and kind of catch our breath here for a second. We are on Google, Amazon Fire TV, and live streaming on our Weather 225 mobile app. Like I said, we've been having some issues with Facebook today, so make sure that you find us there. We are also there, in addition, outside of severe weather coverage, 24/7. So we're gonna take a quick break real quick. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hazards Radio, the voice of the National Weather Service, station KEC 56. serving the Dallas-Fort Worth listening area. The following reports of weather, temperature, and wind were made at 10 p.m. DFW Airport, a thunderstorm, 79, dew point 74, relative humidity 84%, wind north at 12, gusting to 17, pressure 29.97 inches and rising. Dallas Love Field, a thunderstorm, 82, northwest at 8. Fort Worth Meacham, a thunderstorm, 75, northwest at 25, gusting to 33. Arlington, a thunderstorm, 78, west at 5. McKinney, light rain, 81, south at 8. Denton, light rain, 69, northwest at 20, gusting to 28. Elsewhere around the region, Wichita Falls, light rain, 72, east at 32, gusting to 45. Abilene, partly cloudy, 71, east at 17, gusting to 28. Waco, cloudy, 80, southeast at 15. Tyler, cloudy, 81, southeast at 9. Once again at 10 p.m., DFW Airport, a thunderstorm, 79, north at 12, gusting to 17. Now let's check on your local forecast for the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Severe thunderstorm watch 193 in effect until 4 a.m. Sunday. Tonight, mostly cloudy with thunderstorms likely. Showers likely. Some thunderstorms may be severe with damaging winds and large hail. Locally heavy rainfall possible this evening. Lows in the upper 60s. South winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Chance of rain 70%. Sunday, mostly cloudy. Highs in the mid-80s. South winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Sunday night, mostly cloudy. A chance of showers and thunderstorms in the evening, then a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms after midnight. Lows in the upper 60s. South winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Chance of rain 30%. The hazardous weather outlook through tonight for North Texas. Severe storms will move across much of North Texas this evening and overnight. Large hail in excess of 2, and damaging wind gusts between 60 and 80 miles an hour will be the main threats. A tornado or two cannot be ruled out. Isolated flash flooding is also possible. Spotter activation may be requested tonight across portions of North Texas. And now the hazardous weather outlook for Sunday through Friday. The severe weather threat continues on Sunday. Large to very large hail, damaging winds, and a tornado or two cannot be ruled out. The unsettled weather pattern will lead to additional instances of strong to severe storms each day, mainly in the afternoon and evening. The flash flooding threat will be increasing the latter half of next week. The current time is 10:16 p.m. Central Daylight Time. You are listening to NOAA, All Hazards Radio, the voice of the National Weather Service, station KEC 56. Serving the Dallas-Fort Worth listening area. The following reports of weather, temperature, and wind were made at 10 p.m. DFW Airport, a thunderstorm, 79, dew point 74, relative humidity 84%, wind north at 12, gusting to 17, pressure 29.97 inches and rising. Dallas Love Field, a thunderstorm.
All right, folks, we're coming back to you live with another severe weather update, and this is for the southern segment that we've been watching pretty much all evening, and we need to be alert over the fact that there is a new area over portions of Johnson County near Bono, and the reason we're pointing this out is notice this little notch feature moving towards Cleburne. We have some inflow fading into the storm. It's an interesting feature to watch, but also there's some fairly broad rotation occurring over the last little bit. Now notice just how quickly, it's been rotating just a little bit, but notice how quickly this swings in. And we're starting to see some of those greens and reds coming together. So curious to see if the Weather Service does anything about this shortly. Not a whole lot of updates are coming in. This is not necessarily for an immediate tornado threat, but it's just something to be watching carefully. And one of the things that we have to do every now and then, if you get the right conditions coming together with a segment like this, you can begin to see rotation forming and even a spin-up tornado threat. And we're looking at some tools off screen. This one is updating in about 30 seconds, so we'll let you know. But this is a rotation tracking tool. In fact, I might even boot this up here in just a second. But over Bono and just to the east, we're watching this area of rotation where there is some concern for maybe some developing rotation. It's not quite tornadic yet, but there is a good sign with that little inflow notch down at the bottom that maybe we might start to see potentially, it's not guaranteed, we might start to see maybe some rotation trying to form there. Another thing that would also mean is if we start to see that rotating updraft, that might also mean that there could be some hail trying to come back with this. So right now, radar's estimating, let's see, about 1.5 inches, but that is probably not what's occurring just because of that warming that I mentioned earlier. So we have that. And let's go back one scan. All right, so that's not looking okay. So just looking at some other things off to the side, just a quick update. This storm is going to be moving into Cleburne. I'm curious. I'm going to look off to the side here. Not a lot of people know, but in Corsicana, there's a radar site there. I'm going to have to be looking. We don't have access to their data, but they may have a look at these storms once they're coming in. So just reminding myself of that. See if they're live this evening. It does not appear that they are live yet, so I'll check in with that later. Anyways, no new updates with this from the National Weather Service at this time, but still watching an area. If the radar's not moving right now, we're looking at some tools off to our side just to kind of give us a quick glance. We have a rotation tool that's indicating that there is some rotation. And keep in mind, we're not trying to scare you thinking that there's an immediate tornado risk or anything like that. This is just giving us an idea of what's happening with the storm. And it is showing that there's a little pocket of rotation occurring. But what I'm starting to notice is it looks like we may be trying to get a big ball of wind on the backside of this. And we might start to see this start bowing out again. From Crescent to Godley to Bono. Let's actually put this into motion real quick, just so you can see over the last little bit this storm's movement, and as it's moving in. And this one is moving to Cleburne here, probably in the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. Rain is already over Joshua, but you're probably going to start to see some of those winds there as well. And this storm is warned for, I believe it was 65 miles an hour winds, or 60 to 65. Let's look at those winds real quick. And there it is. Starting to see the brighter colors coming back. And this is indicating up to 65 in this little area right in here. Also watching some strong winds that just passed through Glen Rose. So this is primarily a damaging wind concern still. So we're keeping a close eye on these. Notice how quickly that sparked up with those strong winds coming together again. And this is moving into Godley and into portions of Bono. And we did have that rotation there, but it looks like these strong winds kind of gusted that out, if you will. These winds will be moving towards Highway 171 here shortly. So if you're in Godley, Bono, Cleburne, get ready. These are probably going to be 60 to 65, maybe even some isolated gusts of 70 with this storm moving in. Some of the ones in Glen Rose, those also look quite strong. Keeping a very close eye on that. It looks like trying to also see what mode the radar is in, because this is not updating very often. We were hoping that the Weather Service would put this in a different mode. For those who don't know, there are different modes to the radars that occur, and sometimes we get sweeps that are a lot faster. Or maybe it is in that mode. Okay, so this one's updating quicker than the other one. So we'll check back in with that here in a little bit. But I'm also noticing that our rotation tool, we're starting to see another pocket of rotation near Cleburne, kind of over Cleburne. And let me actually boot up our rotation tracker so you can see what exactly we're looking at, so we're all on the same page. That looks like there's a little bit of rotation coming up into the community of Cleburne. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. And we'll get this booted up for you. See what that update is. If you hear the little dings in the background, that is our Weather Service chat session. All right, so let's go to the rotation tracker. I'm going to put up the radar banner real quick, just so it's easy to kind of read the reflectivity here. And we'll boot this up and show you what exactly we're talking about. And there's a little bitty notch kind of located over Cleburne that we're watching. So I'm going to move this over. Here's the Cleburne storm. Notice that little notch over Cleburne. Here's our rotation tracker. And just to the south of that is where we're watching these brighter colors with the rotation tracker. So just to put into perspective, when you have these reds, that is indicative of strong winds. Once you start to get into those greens, into yellows, that's when you're talking strong rotation. So there's a bit of stronger rotation occurring with this. Let's go to the velocity here real quick and show you what we're looking at. And there's a little pocket of rotation occurring just to the south of Cleburne, and this is over Highway 171 and 174, and this is to the south of 67. So we're getting these little pockets where you see these rotation areas kind of blow up real quickly, and then that's when we're going to start watching these. There is a little inflow notch right here, maybe trying to do something further to the west. I tell you what, those are some very strong winds. Radar is indicating, let's see what the fastest one is. About 60 to 62. So we're seeing some strong winds with these. We are in the 60 mile per hour range there. So Godly, there's still going to be some strong winds there. Let's take a look at that hail core tracker. And we're still looking at some 1-inch hail. So it wouldn't surprise me if some nickels, some dimes start falling here. And I told y'all just a second ago, 65 mile per hour winds were possible near Godly. We're just now getting a report too. And I do believe that this, if we go to this, I do believe that there was a 65 mile per hour wind from an amateur radio operator, and this was in Godly. That was literally a minute ago. And National Weather Service is updating the Hood and Johnson County storm. They are now issuing a considerable warning, and I'll show you just by lowering this, the little warning up here where it says considerable. They're going to go ahead and issue the considerable warning just because of the damaging 70 mile per hour winds that they're expecting with this. And I totally agree with them on that. These winds are just looking more and more concerning as time goes on. And it looks like we're going to get our next sweep here in about 5 seconds. And see what the radar is saying. Okay, so there's the new sweep that just came in. Let's look back at those winds. And notice just... notice how quickly these winds keep kind of going in and out with these little rotation areas. So not an immediate tornado risk with these. Like we said, we're not trying to get everyone afraid that there's a tornado. But what we're looking at is pattern recognition with this and consistency. If we start to see these little rotation areas consistent and they're continuing with it, that's when we're going to be watching for tornado risk. But we're starting to see just these little pockets of rotation that could also be indicative of strong winds in the area. And notice we are approaching, we're still about 60 to 65. These brighter winds are most likely approaching 70 there too. And like I said, we're starting to see these winds kind of come back to life. Notice just over the last little bit, this scan earlier, we didn't see a whole lot going on with it. And then notice just how quickly this balled up into a more substantial wind. So this one might actually be moving towards Burleson here on the southern sides, Briar Oaks, if it holds together. Definitely moving into the Keene area, into Joshua. This is going to be there shortly. This has had a reported 65 mile per hour sustained winds here just a little bit ago. And this one could cause some damage. So if you're in Joshua, if you're in Briar Oaks, Burleson, Keene, and Alvarado, if you're in a mobile home, if you're in a trailer, get to shelter, because you don't want to ride this thing out in a mobile home or a trailer, just because winds that strong can damage mobile homes. It can also tip over mobile homes or trailers or RVs. So make sure that you're indoors and away from windows in a sturdy structure, because even 65 mile per hour winds can cause damage to regular homes, some homes on built foundations. 65 mile per hour winds, there's a big difference. Even though it doesn't feel like a lot or look like a lot, there's a big difference between that 5 mile an hour, between 60 and 65, and there's a big difference between 60 and 70 mile per hour winds. Okay, so the Weather Service, that was another update, continuing that warning for 70 mile per hour winds down to the south. Let's go and take a look. Let's take a look further to the north real quick. We're not going to overlook this. We don't want you to think that we're ignoring some of these areas, but let's go back to this radar and let's take a quick look just kind of around Tarrant County just to show. Here's what we got going on. We're going to put on reflectivity. Not a whole lot going on severe weather-wise, and there we go. Okay, so around the area, we'll go back to this one. Our little streaming thing is not wanting to work. Let's go to the north into Tarrant County. We're still seeing some winds, maybe 45, 50 miles an hour. So it wouldn't surprise me if we're still seeing some gusty winds, but it is not what it was. In fact, it is almost completely fallen apart up to the north. Still seeing some little areas where we could see maybe some stronger winds of almost 50. That's closer to Fort Worth. Not quite severe. Maybe even some pockets of I hate to say small hail, just because that melting that's going on because of the heat. It might be nickel to penny sized up aloft, but it's most likely melting once it gets closer to the surface. So you'll get those raindrops that sound like there's a little something in them. That's probably what's occurring near Arlington, Irving, and Grapevine, but nothing really substantial. Same down here in Cleburne, not a whole lot going on. The radar is estimating almost 1 inch hail in some areas, but it just does not look that impressive, especially with the melting that's occurring. And that latest scan, not a whole lot to talk about there. Speaking of the latest scan, let's look. And I tell you what, those winds are still, they're holding on. And Joshua, the community of Joshua, if you're in there, notice these winds are getting really closer. They're not moving necessarily dead east as they were just a little bit ago. You can almost see it was moving east-northeast, and then it kind of just turned a little bit more to the left and is moving directly northeast now. So the community of Joshua, you have about 5 minutes or so before this is on your doorstep. 70 mile per hour winds are likely with this portion of the storm. In fact, this looks like the more concerning portion of this storm. This will be moving towards Burleson and Briar Oaks shortly over the next 15 minutes or so. So make sure that you are indoors and away from windows. Heads up, if you're in Joshua, you have a couple minutes if you're in a mobile home, RV, or trailer to get to a sturdy shelter. And I would do it now. Just make sure some mobile home parks have, built-in shelters. It's not because of a tornado. It's just that you want to be completely safe because 70-mile-per-hour winds can cause damage to mobile homes, trailers, and RVs. They do damage to structures that are on sturdy foundations too. It's just that they are quite strong winds. Same with Burleson and Briar Oaks. You have a couple minutes before this moves in. Make sure that you get to a sturdy building and seek shelter indoors and away from windows. So let's see. You can almost see a little bow segment occurring with the velocity. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at there. Also looking just at our comments to see on Facebook. We know there's a lot of people watching across all of our platforms. Just trying to look and see anyone saying anything. Okay. So that's what we got going on here. Like I said, I wish I could tell you a lot more than what's going on. Unfortunately, there's a lot of the stations that we typically get our information from that are just not reporting tonight for some reason. So not a whole lot to go on there. Someone's asking about Arlington. Arlington, let me actually show you. Let me make sure that this one's not going to... Okay, so I won't use that product. That one's still having some problems. Let's go to this radar. And for Arlington right now, there is nothing going on. You're getting some heavy rainfall at the moment. But really, wind-wise, excuse me, it's really probably 30, 40 mile per hour winds with it at max. But it's not what we're seeing further to the south. As the storms that are in western portions of Tarrant County move in, those might be packing about 40 mile per hour winds, maybe some 50 mile per hour winds at times. Nothing severe. Lightning definitely, heavy rain definitely. This is going to cause maybe some isolated flooding, but really in Tarrant and Dallas counties, these are not the same significant storms that we saw earlier. We will have to watch, though, this storm to the southwest that's moving to the north and east. This big area of wind that we saw here, if this continues, it might move closer to Crowley, Mansfield, maybe southern sides near Webb. I hate to get too ahead of ourselves just because this is quite a ways away. In fact, let me actually get a time of arrival with this for you as well. James says lots of lightning and thunder in the Burleson area. That doesn't surprise me. These are pretty significant storms. Fortunately, not that significant hail that we've seen. Anything like that. These winds are still nasty and they still cause damage, but fortunately we're not dealing with multiple hazards with these storms. Let me put this on and then I'll do a manual track here behind the scenes. Actually, let me see if I can actually get that to load up on here. I don't know why that it's not working. I apologize for that. I wish I could show you this tool that we're using, but our little streaming thing just does not want to connect the computers. So this one's moving about northeast at, say, 30. So if it was going to arrive in these areas, we're talking the time of arrival once it gets past Joshua is going to be, this would be Burleson around 10:45-ish, Venus around 11, Mansfield around 11:03, Cedar Hill around 11:24, and Duncanville, if it held completely together, that would be there around 11:34. So that's what we're looking at here with this storm. Still noticing some very strong winds with this, and unfortunately, this is just going to be kind of the tail of the night, if you will. We're going to have just multiple storms like this with these nuisance winds, and we're just gonna ride this thing out. Also noticing some strong winds near Cleburne. Let's go down to that one pocket of strong winds. This is showing up to 63. So, we have two areas that we're watching here. Also, not quite strong rotation. That's going to be hard to see because let me show you this little area right here. Notice how the radar kind of goes a little bit crazy with this almost ring around it where stuff looks like there's just a million lines coming from the center. That's what we call the cone of silence. And once you get kind of within this area, the radar is not really interpretable just because the radar starts looking out. There's about a mile radius. It does not record next to the radar, and then as it's lifting up into the atmosphere, it gets a poor reading just because the storm is basically literally on top of it. So it can't really get a good reading. And just about to the Joshua area is where that cone of silence kind of ends. So you're not going to get that good of a reading in these areas. So we're looking at these. Someone asked for the tornado threat. So there is a tornado threat today. It's just not the most significant risk that we had. Earlier for the western portions of our counties, of course, we had that large damaging hail threat. But the main threat all day today has been primarily damaging winds. Now, that's not to say that we won't see maybe a brief spin up in an area or two as the night progresses. But right now, we're mostly worried about these 70 to 80 mile per hour winds that we've been seeing at times. So there is, and there's a lot of meteorologists that coined the phrase low but not zero. This is kind of one of those nights where there is a low risk. It's not as significant as the other risks that we've seen, so it's something to watch. There could be a brief spin up, if you will, kind of embedded with these bow segments where it kind of will spin up really quickly. Sometimes those can occur in between some scans where it looks good in one and then it's gone the next. So it's just a risk that's there, but it's not as high as the damaging wind threat. And of course, those damaging winds are the primary risk just because we have multiple areas of these strong winds. Let's see. New reports. I wish there was more reports coming out of this because I would show a little bit more and have a little bit more details on this. Of course, if you're in any of these warnings, make sure you're seeking shelter indoors and away from windows. I would also like to mention, if you weren't watching earlier, some of these communities, and I'm not sure, I can't confirm if anyone's actually sounding their sirens, but earlier when we saw some of those 70 plus mile per hour winds, some communities were sounding sirens. So if your community is sounding sirens, let us know in the comments. And the reason I'm saying this is there is a common misconception with storm sirens that people think that they're exclusively activated for tornadoes and only tornadoes. That is not the fact. Hold on, excuse me. So the thing is, with sirens, they are not just for tornadoes. The common misconception is they are tornado sirens. They're actually outdoor warning sirens. So if there's any hazard that's posing a threat to life or property that is weather related, whether it be large hail, whether it be damaging winds, whether it be a tornado, that's when sirens are sounded. And another misconception is, in addition to they're only for tornadoes, is that the Weather Service activates them. That's not the case. Many people don't actually know, but local Office of Emergency Management leaders will look at what's occurring and they will determine if a storm is really eligible or not for siren activation. So sometimes communities will sound their sirens for these wind threats, for hail threats, of course tornadoes. Sometimes they don't even go off at all. It's entirely up to maybe one or two people whether or not these happen. Okay, so new severe thunderstorm warning, and like I said, this was turning a little bit more to the northeast, and this is going to include portions of southern and Dallas County, or southern Tarrant and southern Dallas counties, and this is for Ellis, Johnson, Hill, and Tarrant, and this is for 70 mile per hour winds. So the Weather Service is concerned with that segment and the segment to the south near Grandview, and this for Kim asking about Arlington earlier, heads up to you, Arlington is not included in this, but we'll be watching because if this continues to move in that direction, it could come close. But right now, Arlington, the city limits are not exactly in this warning. So bear with me for a minute. We're going to send out a push notification on our app. If you haven't already downloaded our app, make sure that you do so. So if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on your computer, your TV, on YouTube, Amazon Fire TV, if you encounter power outages, download our free Weather 225 mobile app. We have push notification alerts for warnings. We also are streaming there live right now. So in the event that you lose power and you can't watch us on your computer or TV, you can watch us on the app, and that is entirely for free. So make sure to download that there as well. And let's see, this is for Dallas, Tarrant, Hill County. Who else? Allison Johnson. Okay. So that notification was just sent out. That warning was just issued. And this was, this was until 11:45. So this one goes until 11:45. And this does include portions of the Metroplex. So unfortunately, we're still going to be watching these for the next little bit. And these are going to be moving into the Metroplex. So if you are in the southern sides of Dallas and Tarrant counties, that's Mansfield, Webb, Forest Hill, Duncanville, DeSoto, make sure that you stay indoors and away from windows. Just a quick heads up for anyone in these communities. These are producing potentially up to 70 mile per hour winds. Now, not every single person's going to see this because these are kind of in a couple of segments. But I tell you, because this is a considerable damage threat, and there's an update now to the warnings. It used to be that there was just a handful of warnings that the Weather Service issued. They have a new system now where they categorize warnings by intensity. So you'll get your normal severe weather risk, you'll have considerable, and then you'll have destructive. This one has been tagged with the considerable damage tag because of the 70 mile per hour winds. And we're expecting these winds between Itasca, Grandview. There's another area near Crowley and Joshua. So there's a couple areas here, and we're most likely going to see these kind of move around here shortly, just because we've been seeing this most of the night. But strong winds are moving into the community of Joshua. This is moving towards Burleson, Crowley, and Briar Oaks. And I'm trusting that these are that strong just because notice how close we are to the radar. This is actually a couple hundred feet. This is actually 300 feet off the ground where we're seeing these up to almost 70 mile per hour wind gusts based on radar. And then another couple of areas are near Grandview, another one near Covington. There's another one just south of Alvarado where there's some strong winds occurring with this. And so if you're in any of these communities, heads up to Midlothian, Maypearl, Waxahachie, Red Oak, DeSoto, Duncanville, Forreston, Itasca. These are going to be areas that are under the gun for these winds over the next little bit because they're included in the warning. This does not include Dallas, the city limits of Dallas. This does not include most of the city limits of Fort Worth. This does not include the city limits of Arlington, but there could still be some strong winds, especially in the Forest Hill area if this continues to move to the north and east. So we're watching these very carefully. All right, so like I said, I wish I had some more to pass along, but we're not getting a whole lot of reports this evening, unfortunately. Typically we'll get a little bit more, but I guess it's just a busy weekend. Also, there's a lot more chasers up to the north in Missouri where there is a tornado risk tonight. So the majority of the chasers have gone north to go check that out, I think. So let's look at what we've got going on here. Let's see, what is that from the Storm Prediction Center? Okay, that's not for us. And just a quick... Oh, there's another update. Rio Vista, 60 mile per hour winds. That was from an amateur radio operator. That was not very long ago either. That was about 10 minutes ago. So let's look what we've got going on here. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We're going to continue to track these storms. If you're watching, make sure that you share this, like it, and follow our media for future broadcasts. We do this every time there's severe weather in the area, so if you like this broadcast, share it with your neighbors. Make sure that you like and you follow. Make sure you also download our Weather 225 mobile app. But it definitely helps us to not only grow our social media, but it also helps us to reach as many people as possible when you like and share these live streams. So make sure to do that. Let's see. I want to do a broad view real quick, just because we do have some thunderstorms in the immediate Dallas city limits and in Fort Worth. These are not severe, but this is just a quick update. The overview of the area. Heavy rain in some spots over Irving. This is near the DFW airport area. That's over Las Colinas, Carrollton, Richardson, Irving, North Dallas, downtown Dallas, northern Fort Worth. We got a couple areas here with some heavy rainfall. The only risk with this is if this kind of sits over the areas, especially there's quite a bit of rainfall in portions of Tarrant County over Fort Worth. You're going to get some of these pockets of heavier rain and the urban effect. And what I mean by urban effect is all the concrete, the water kind of just sits, especially if drains don't have capable draining or if they're clogged. There's no earth to kind of saturate it. And so you're going to get some isolated street flooding on the roadways. So unfortunately, if you're out driving tonight, be careful in some areas where rain has been sitting over for the last little bit. No flash flood warnings yet, but there could be some pockets of rainfall there. Someone asked, tornado in the Joshua Keene area. If you're hearing sirens, let us know. But didn't necessarily see a tornado risk, but we were looking at if you saw some really strong winds earlier, we did have about 70 mile per hour winds move into the Joshua area just a minute ago. As this kind of, if you look at the last little loop, notice how bright these winds were. We were covering these live, and some quite strong winds. The Weather Service issued a considerable damage tag just because of that 70 mile per hour wind pocket. But if you're hearing sirens, let us know. Just a reminder, we have a couple more viewers than we had earlier. Like I said, if you hear sirens in your community, it's not just for a tornado risk. It's a misconception that these are just issued for tornadoes. If there is a weather hazard that poses a danger to life or property, communities will choose whether or not to sound the sirens. Office of Emergency Management leaders are the ones that issue those, not the Weather Service. So it wouldn't surprise me if some communities were activating their sirens just because of these strong winds. So if you heard it, we haven't had a tornado warning. In fact, we haven't really had any strong rotation on radar, but there have been some pretty substantial winds. Sirens were sounding in that area, I'm guessing, so that was most likely because of these very strong winds. Unfortunately, we might see some more damage reports coming out from this because 70 mile per hour winds, they are pretty substantial. They can cause a bit of damage to not only trees, but to roofs, fences, outdoor objects, stuff like that. Fortunately, though, and we were going to see this most of the night, we're seeing kind of a weakening trend. This kind of blew up. Notice it didn't look like much. Then all of a sudden, bright colors, 70 mile per hour winds moved into Joshua. And then as it's moving further to the northeast, it's not as substantial as it was earlier. In fact, winds are, let me sample a few areas. These are still around 60 miles an hour. So we're watching this. Another thing to look at is another pretty strong pocket further to the south, and radar is estimating almost 65 to 70 mile per hour winds. This is near Itasca, Covington, south of Grandview. These are going to be some strong winds too. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if, and wow, take a look at that last scan. This is going to be the next big area. Notice just how quickly this blew up. Grandview, this is a big ball of 70 mile per hour winds. In fact, we're actually clocking some closer to 75. So down the line, Maypearl, even Forreston, in Waxahachie. Get ready, because this is going to be the next area with the significant winds. Notice just how quickly this blew up, and that is a big area of destructive winds. So we're going to be watching what the Weather Service says for this, but that is pretty concerning. The area to the north is not as concerning as it was, but now it looks like this one's taking over as the more significant wind threat, moving into the community of Grandview, north of Itasca, headed into the areas near Maypearl, and eventually it may move closer to Forreston. Let's do a broad view real quick, just because additionally we have a lot of rain further to the west as well. We're not going to leave this storm for a long time. We'll come back to it in just a second. Bear with us. But for anyone who's in our western counties that were hammered earlier by some wind, even some hail, not a whole lot going on right now, just some heavy rainfall. Keep in mind some isolated flash flooding may occur just because there's been a lot of rain in these areas, and we're still seeing some rain occurring in these areas as well. Same with the Dallas County storm. May start to see some urban flooding on some area roadways and some low-lying areas and areas prone to flooding, just because we've had a lot of rainfall sitting over not only Dallas County, but also into Tarrant County. In fact, let me actually show you 1 hour rainfall totals. And in Tarrant County, over the last hour, it's about an inch or so. Some areas are seeing about a half inch to an inch. Some areas are seeing an inch and a quarter. But notice, take a look at all that rainfall to the south. This is a very, very heavy rainfall situation, slow-moving rainfall situation as well. So in addition to those very damaging winds, we're looking at that as well. Let's look at the storm total rainfall. And there is a lot of rainfall from this system. Some areas have picked up close to 3.5 inches, and western Tarrant County's picked up 1 to 2 inches of rainfall. So maybe some urban flooding is possible in portions of Tarrant and Dallas counties. So let's go back to this. Like we said, we weren't going to leave it for too long. And still, quite strong winds. We'll get a new update here in about a minute. I'm also looking off to a different product here and just looking at what's occurring with this. Still strong winds. I tell you, these are closer to not really sure what I'm looking at a product off to the side here, and it is not interpreting that well. So we'll keep looking at this one, and some of these areas are showing about 68. One area is showing 75. So, like I said, if you're in Maypearl, get ready for these strong winds. It's not out of the question. There are probably some of these communities that are sounding their sirens. So if you're tuning in and you hear your sirens going off and you're wondering what's happening, we don't have a tornado warning. We don't even have a tornado watch. If you're hearing sirens, it's because of these damaging winds that are moving into southern portions of Johnson County, northern portions of Hill County, and western portions of Ellis County. And it's because some of these winds are approaching 70 miles an hour. And we've seen pretty substantial winds most of the evening. A lot of it was with this group of storms moving into our southern counties. And keep in mind, 70 mile per hour winds are pretty strong, and they can cause a pretty bit of damage. It's it's not a good thing. And let me see if we have any sort of new reports. No, just that Rio Vista report. Like I said, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of reports coming out of this thing. Not a whole lot of people out there looking at these. And once again, thank you for tuning in and making... Hold on. Okay, that's not for our area. Thank you for tuning into this broadcast. Like I said earlier, make sure that you share this. Not only does it help us grow, but it also helps us reach out to as many people as possible during severe weather. Make sure if you like this broadcast as well, you like it and you follow our page for more. To put into perspective real quick, once we start getting into the 65 mile per hour range plus with winds, because some of these are showing up to 70, To put into perspective, an EF0 tornado, which is a very weak tornado, that is between 65 and 85 miles an hour. Now, think of a very weak tornado is going to mostly be a very isolated type of path when it moves through. It's going to be over a small area. It's going to be very short lived. Once we start getting winds like that and you get into this ball segment or this bow segment, if you will, and it's more widespread, it's almost worse than a weak tornado just because there's a lot more coverage that it's moving over. A lot more areas are seeing this wind. And like I said, EF0 tornado is typically between 65 and 85 miles an hour. That is per the National Weather Service. When you get into that range and it's not an isolated area and it's this big ball of wind or this big bow segment, that's almost worse just because it's over a more widespread area that's seeing these winds and it's not an isolated or localized area. All right, thank you for the report, Mindy. She's saying that her sister let her know that in Cleburne, sirens were sounding, and that doesn't surprise me. There was quite strong winds there earlier. And like I said, some of these communities were probably sounding it just because of the wind. And for those who are just now tuning in who may not know, I mentioned this a couple of times, so sorry to sound like a broken record for some of the viewers who have been here most of the evening. Sirens are sounded by community emergency management leaders, and it is for any weather hazard, whether tornado, hail, damaging winds. They issue it for any sort of hazard, and they're not issued by the National Weather Service. It's usually by one or two people who are coordinating with the Office of Emergency Management. And, they can choose to issue it. They can choose not to issue it. Sometimes they don't sound. Sometimes they sound it for any type of hazard. So any reports like that are really appreciated. So I appreciate you passing that along. So we did have sirens sounding in Cleburne. We also got a report in Joshua that the sirens were sounding as that was moving in. And it would not surprise me if we... let me see. Nope. Not a new update. That would not surprise me if Maypearl and Grandview are probably also sounding their sirens too, just because this is some pretty nasty winds moving in. I'm still clocking. Some of these areas are still showing about 73 mile an hour winds. So this is not going away anytime soon. In fact, there's also another pocket near Venus that's also looking close to 65 plus. Someone said they're in Burleson, no sirens yet. This could all right, well, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you watching this. We are going to be covering these as they move through. Hopefully we can give you the best information we can with this. So if you like these broadcasts, make sure that you like and share these so we can help reach as many people as possible. Like I said, it doesn't only help us to grow, but it also helps us to reach as many people as possible. So I appreciate you tuning in, letting us know that you're watching. So that was... Let me look. Trying to see if there's any new updates. Like I said, I hate not having a whole lot of information to pass along, but unfortunately there is not a whole lot of reports coming in. We've had a handful of reports from amateur radio coming in, but unfortunately this is kind of one of those weird nights where there's not a whole lot of people reporting on these things. So like I said, I hate that there's not a whole lot to pass along, but right now not a whole lot of confirmation. And yeah, that area near Venus I mentioned a second ago, notice just how that one took off. New severe thunderstorm warning, or no, they're continuing the one for Ellis County, Dallas County, Hill, Johnson, and Tarrant. I think they kind of shaved off the western portion of it. So that's some good news for some of those western counties that are outside of it. But really, they're continuing the 70 mile per hour wind risk. And yeah, there it is. They just trimmed off the portion for Bono and Godly. So if you're in Venus, Midlothian, Maypearl, you're probably going to get some pockets of strong winds here. Even in Mansfield, close to south sides of Webb, Britain, get ready. These are probably going to be 65 to 70 mile per hour winds easily, at least based off of radar. So let's go back to reflectivity. And thank you everyone who's commenting. I appreciate the feedback, and I'm glad that we can help out with the severe weather coverage this evening. I appreciate all the comments, and we're glad that we can help out. So let's go back to this. We'll look at the 1 hour rainfall. This is just a lot of rainfall falling in this. So in addition to all the severe weather hazards, there is a lot of rainfall. Some areas saw up to 3 inches in an hour near Pecan Plantation earlier. That is crazy. So really heavy rainfall with this. And that's going to continue to be the case because this is just, in addition to the wind, this is going to be a pretty large area of heavy rainfall. And just notice how slowly it's moving too. So there's a lot of rain falling with this, and this is going to continue to maybe cause some isolated street flooding as this moves through. So let's go back to our velocity. Still seeing some pockets of concerning wind, and this is going to be moving right into Midlothian here in the next 5 minutes or so if it hasn't already moved in. Venus, strong winds, Mansfield, Lyland, Britain, 60 to 65 mile per hour winds. The Weather Service is continuing that considerable damage tag for the significant winds of 70 miles an hour possible. So we're going to be watching that. And that's another notification that I just received, and that is just updating the information on that severe thunderstorm warning from earlier. And I tell you what, this is another pocket. This is going to be, it looks like this is expanding with the damaging winds, and it's not quite bow-shaped as the one was earlier that was moving into portions of Parker County, but there is a handful of areas that have some pretty concerning winds. I'm going to actually look at the Dallas Terminal Doppler site and just see what that's saying for the Midlothian area. This is looking kind of high up, so this may not be the best interpretation for this. Yeah, that's probably not going to work. That's looking about 1,000 feet up, so we're not getting a really good reading for the surface. For those who don't know, we have 2 additional radars in addition to the Weather Service radar with a lot of these feeds, and these are for the Dallas Love Field Airport radar and the DFW Airport radar. They help a lot when we have storms in the Metroplex. They're a useful tool. There is another set of radars across the area too that we like to look at occasionally. We don't have the access to broadcast it, but it is a research product that's been in the area called CASA, and they have a handful of radars across the area, but we don't have access to it tonight, unfortunately. I'm going to actually look, for those also who don't know, there is a radar in Corsicana, and I'm not quite sure if they're live tonight. Every now and then they broadcast their radar so that you can actually see what it is live. I would love to see if this is on, just because this is going to be moving very close. Yeah, and unfortunately they're not live tonight. So I was going to see, just because this is getting pretty close to the Corsicana area, that would be a really good tool to see. Pass that along. So Midlothian, basically, if you're in any of the warning area to the east of, I believe that is Highway 35. If you're east of I-35, let's see. Getting some notifications here. New update saying someone's mentioning Scarborough Fair is in the path of this storm. I tell you, these winds are well exceeding 65 miles an hour, easily 70. I'm getting concerned looking off to the side, and I'm wondering. I'm wondering if they're going to start to upgrade this portion of the warning to the north. We definitely have 75-mile-per-hour winds to the south, but we're starting to see some of those more concerning segments where the radar's it's saying close to Venus and Midlothian that this is approaching 80 to 84. Now that may not be 84 miles an hour exactly at the surface, but if we're starting to see those 80-mile-per-hour winds again, this is going to be concerning for the destructive tag. And I'm looking to see if the Weather Service is mentioning anything about this. But if we're approaching those 80-mile-per-hour winds again for Midlothian, this is going to cause a bit of damage. So if you're in Midlothian, if you're in Britain, if you're in Venus, it's already too late for Venus just because you're already basically in the storm. So if you're in your home, just get away from doors and windows. But I tell you what, for Midlothian coming up pretty shortly, if this is approaching 80-mile-per-hour winds again, that is going to cause a bit of damage. You need to be indoors and away from windows. So we're going to be watching that one very carefully. That does look pretty concerning if that's going to continue to approach. And that last scan, we're still seeing some 78 with some of these. So, and this is right next to the radar, almost 80 near Mansfield. Even down to the south, we're still seeing some winds that look like they're exceeding 70 miles an hour. So we might start to see some areas picking up with the winds. Let's see. Someone asked about Everman. And Everman, I'm pretty sure is just to the north of Burleson. I'll zoom in. Yeah, there it is. Right now in Everman, you are in a warning, but the bulk of the activity it's made its way past you. So if you're in Everman, you're fine right now, just because. And there's a bunch of updates that came in. So if you're in Everman, that activity is pushed off to your east. There's no severe activity to the west. The warning still includes you, but you are not in really the path of any severe warnings right now. That update that just came in, they expired the severe thunderstorm watch for Cook, Jack, Montague, Stephen, Wise, and Young counties. So our western counties, as this is moving through, it's getting knocked off of the watch. So that's some good news. Someone's asking about Itasca. I'll move down to the south, and I believe that is not. It's not in a warning, but the potential for maybe some gusty winds of 50 plus is there. So you're not exactly in the warning per se. And as I'm talking, of course, all the updates are coming in now. Severe thunderstorm warning issued for Hill, Navarro, Ellis counties. So we'll start to see that plotted here in just a second. Someone's saying power outage in Mansfield. Thank you for the report. That does not surprise me. There were some quite strong winds there just a second ago. Someone asked, are we under a tornado watch? Right now, the only warning that we have is severe thunderstorm, and the watch that we have until 4 a.m. is for a severe thunderstorm watch. So there is no tornado watch. There's no tornado warnings. There were quite strong winds in Mansfield just a little bit ago. So if you heard it and it was loud, it was because of those winds. No tornado warnings or anything like that. So it's just a severe thunderstorm watch and a primarily damaging wind risk. Someone's asking, catching up with these. Someone's asking about Kennedale And Kennedale is right to the north of Mansfield. I'll zoom in on this real quick. The storms are just about past, so give it another couple of minutes. The winds will start to die down. It'll be a little bit more quieter, and some rain will linger in this area. Someone's asking if it's safe to be near windows in Grandview. I would give it another 5. I'd give it another 5, maybe 10 minutes or so, just because there might still be some winds of 50. But the bulk of it's starting to move out of that area. So the next area with these significant winds are going to be moving into Midlothian here shortly. And in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe some of these communities, especially Maypearl and Midlothian, start activating their outdoor sirens. There's a bunch of outdoor events this weekend. I'm not quite sure what's all happening across the region. I know of a couple, but right now, basically, Midlothian and Maypearl, the winds are going to be exceeding 65 mile per hour pretty easily. I actually want to see if we can actually... Okay, let's see what that update is. New mesoscale discussion, not quite out yet. For those who don't know, when I mentioned mesoscale discussion, what happens is the Storm Prediction Center, who issues the severe weather outlooks that we post, they also issue severe thunderstorm watches, tornado watches, flash flood watches, stuff like that. And when that happens is they get in coordination with the Weather Service offices to discuss what's happening. They discuss areas to issue watches. And this one, they might be just talking about the overall severe risk with this. Excuse me. For the viewer that was asking earlier about Itasca, now you are in a severe thunderstorm warning, but the storm is just about past. I'd give it another 15 minutes or so. Make sure that you're indoors and away from windows. But now technically they're in the severe thunderstorm warning, and this will be for the community of Blooming Grove. This will be for Illy, Blooming Grove, Rice, Hillsborough, stuff like that. Someone's asking about tomorrow. Tomorrow there is another severe weather risk. We've been watching this one. I've been looking at the models some for tomorrow as well. I haven't looked at the updated ones for tomorrow, but I do know that today was an enhanced risk. Tomorrow it is not as bad of a risk. But there is, again, the potential for this pesky hail and wind risk. In fact, I'm actually going to look at those. Someone's saying that it's prom night in Mansfield. So for that, definitely we saw some storms there earlier, but to ease your fears, a lot of the school districts and stuff like that, they have plans in place and they have people watching. So if anything was moving into the area, they should be perfectly fine. All schools have a severe weather safety plan. Someone's asking, is it going to hail in Wiley? Right now, this is not a... I'll go up and show you. There's a few storms around the area in the Wiley, Saxony area. Radar is going to show some small hail, but if you weren't watching earlier, we are in the mid to upper 80s in some areas, so there's going to be a melting process, and because of that, there is small hail. So when it goes through that melting process, if it's around pea size, it then melts to basically a raindrop, so you're not going to see any hail. And additionally, all these storms that we have left, these are all mostly damaging wind risks. So we're not really seeing any sort of hail risk with any of these. So you should be good on the hail side. Maybe some gusty 30, 40 mile per hour winds with some of these, but the main severe activities to the south with this segment down here, but really we're not looking at any hail. Someone's asking about Commerce, and that is up here. And you're going to get some rain and some thunderstorms. You are under a watch until 4 in the morning. Still, we'll be watching. Maybe if these end up going severe, that would be something to watch over the next hour or so. Let me actually check the velocity with these. Of course, it's not the bright colors that we were looking at earlier. Maybe some strong winds just to the north of Rockwall in this little pocket here. But right now, we'll be watching these later on. But right now, nothing severe for Commerce. Again, you're going to watch until 4 a.m., so it's just something to watch. If you go to bed, just make sure you have alerts to wake you in the middle of the night if, of course, storms move into your area. Catching up with the comments. And I don't want to ignore what one of the viewers asked earlier. Someone asked about tomorrow. And I'm looking at our HRRR model for tomorrow. And I tell you what, our western counties and our southwestern counties, I feel really bad for, just because we've had just numerous rounds over the past couple of days with all the severe weather. Tomorrow looks like western North Texas is going to see a similar kind of setup that we've been seeing, where storms kind of go up south of Wichita Falls to the west near Abilene, and then they kind of just form in our western counties. Could start to see some of those storms again. So, of course, models may change overnight, so make sure you check back for updates as we post them to the app. So let's go back to this. And still seeing some strong winds. No, I don't quite believe some of the radar estimations. Just because we are looking a ways out. We're almost at 2,000 feet. One of these areas said 90. I don't quite believe that. I do think that we're easily seeing 70 plus. So it's not out of the question that some of these may produce maybe winds exceeding 70. So if you're in Waxahachie, get ready. I would say 70 to 75. We're approaching close to that destructive level with these, and it's just better to be safe than sorry. So make sure that you're indoors and away from windows in Waxahachie, in Midlothian, in Pecan Hill. Let's name off a few other communities. Communities just to the east of Waxahachie off of 878 and right around 287 and Highway 77. Some quite strong winds are going to be moving into there. And then strong winds are currently over Britain. That wouldn't surprise me if these are 70 to exceeding 70 mile per hour with some of those as well. Okay, so I'm going to check a few other tools behind the scenes here. And then let's also go down to the south. Let's not forget our neighbors down here near Italy and Foreston. So basically, just overall, if you're watching and you are in a warning, this is just a blanket warning statement for all of these storms. If you're in any of these warnings, you are easily going to see between 60 and 70, maybe 75 mile per hour winds. That is going to be the main concern. Radar is estimating some small hail with it, but like I said, with the melting process because of the temperatures, it's not going to be very big. We're probably not even looking at a severe hail risk with any of these. If it's making its way to the ground, it's going to be penny sized. So this is going to be primarily a destructive wind threat. Let me look back one more time at this one. And we'll show you. I don't quite. That might be a glitch. Some of these winds, though, are looking pretty concerning moving into the Waxahachie area. Okay, so Waxahachie, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe this starts to be kind of the main area of concern, just because, like I said, we start looking for patterns, and these ones are showing close to 80. It may not be translating to it, but just aloft, it's showing 90, so that might be translating closer to the surface at 78 to 80. So Waxahachie, this is going to be another one of those potentially destructive storms that could cause some tree damage, shingle damage, damage to fences, homes, stuff like that. We don't say this to make you afraid, This is because we want to make sure that you have the very best information to prepare. So this one, and the Weather Service is talking about this. They're saying that the one down to the south is capable of up to 70 miles an hour in Ellis County. I'm starting to think it's 70, and we might be seeing a brief pocket right now where it's exceeding 70, maybe even 80 miles an hour. Like we said, it's looking further a ways away from where the Fort Worth radar is. This is about almost 1,800 feet. So if this is that strong aloft, translating to the surface, it might be closer to 70, 75, maybe even a few isolated gusts of 80. So Waxahachie, just keep that in mind. Some quite strong winds moving into that area. This is currently moving into the Highway 35E corridor, and I believe that that's Highway 77. Areas near Midlothian. This is showing up to 70, 75 mile per hour winds up there too. This will be moving towards Olivia, Oakleaf, closer to Glen Heights, and Red Oak here shortly there as well. So basically, if you're in this warning, get ready for 70 to 75 mile per hour winds, maybe even some gusts of higher possible. And of course, it's not going to surprise me if maybe we get some reports that Waxahachie, Maypearl, Forreston, or any of these communities in this path maybe start to sound their sirens just because of the wind risk that we see occurring with this. And quick reminder too, just because there's a bunch of people saying they couldn't find any weather streams for this. If you're watching and there is no other weather streams for this, make sure that you like and you follow. We do this for every severe weather event here in North Texas to make sure that we're covering these. We like to say that we're the next generation of severe weather coverage here locally. So we do this, so make sure that you follow for more in the future and share this broadcast because, like I said, it doesn't just help us grow and you share and let others know about these broadcasts in our media. It also helps us to reach out during the event to as many people as possible. So make sure that you like and you share this broadcast and follow us, of course, for more. If you're also just now tuning in and you don't know who we are, we also have a free mobile app on the Amazon Fire TV App Store, on Google Play, and on Apple App Store as well. It is free. We have a million tools that I update personally throughout the day to let you have the very best information. And we send out push alerts, severe weather information. You can actually watch us there live as well. Thank you for commenting, everyone who's commenting. Appreciate your feedback. I appreciate the information. Thank you for the comment, Claudia. And thank you for watching. All right, so just going back to this. It may sound like a broken record, so I apologize. Just not a whole lot to say right now. I wish that we had a couple of stations at least reporting. And what I mean by stations is some of these weather recording stations that record the temperatures and the winds. Oklahoma has a cool tool up there that they have. It's their Mesonet system throughout the state to update stuff like that. We don't quite have that here in North Texas. It'd be cool if we did, just to see some of these winds kind of occurring as they do. But not a whole lot of reports coming out. That could be a good thing. Someone saying crazy winds in Midlothian. That does not surprise me. That area saw some strong winds here just a little bit ago, and that may have been exceeding 70 miles an hour. So hopefully you didn't see any damage up there from this. Thank you for that report. But yeah, there were some quite strong winds up there. There's also... and the winds that were just in that area, they're moving into Olivia now. They're moving into Oakleaf shortly, Red Oak, Pecan Hill, and of course, strong winds in Waxahachie. And these are going to easily be exceeding 70 miles an hour, by the way, as well. In fact, we could see some gusts of maybe even higher. Just not a whole lot of reports. Also trying to look through Twitter just to see if anyone has any sort of reports there as well, but just unfortunately not a whole lot. Oh, yeah, that also, I want to check that out too. I'm going to look at the Texas power outages. That's another good reason to download our app is if you're watching on a computer or TV and you lose power, you can watch us on the app. Someone asked about Frisco, and I'll quickly go up to the north. Of course, there is a watch up there for Frisco, but right now it is just, it's not even heavy rain. It's very light rain. Later on, the activity in Denton, which is moderate to heavy rainfall, is going to move in. Really nothing severe at the moment or of concern. Ground shaking a little bit. That might be from the lightning, just because I think that there's some pretty good lightning occurring with this storm in Allen that could be reaching out there as well. Someone's asking about Texoma in the Kingston area. That's on the Oklahoma side. Let me take the radar data off. There is no watch for the Oklahoma side, but some lightning is possible with some of this rain activity, but this is going to be mostly some that is an interesting report. I'm curious why the emergency vehicles are up there. If that's weather related. Crazy wind and heavy rain in Midlothian. Thank you for that report. Yes, that was a pretty big storm that went through there just a little bit ago. We were mentioning earlier that these winds were probably exceeding 70 miles an hour. Fortunately, it looks like stuff is starting to calm down in Midlothian, but unfortunately for communities to the east, they're going to get that same wind here that is moving out of Midlothian and into their communities here shortly. So if you're in Olivia, Red Oak, Pecan Hill, Glen Heights, let's see if we can get any more to plot up there. I'm guessing not. Areas east of Waxahachie, and there's some good news here. Is there of course are communities out here, but there is some also there's also some more rural areas in Ellis County that fortunately a lot of these winds will likely track through. So hopefully not a whole lot of damage occurs in these communities. But of course this is some pretty strong winds. Same with the communities down here, not to overlook areas to the south. If you're in Milford, Italy, Forreston, Bardwell, the winds just do not appear to be as significant as they are to the north. Weather Service, the Weather Service is issuing this for 60 to 65 mile per hour winds, not the 70 mile per hour winds to the north. So just to the west of all this too, we'll go back to reflectivity. There's additional showers and storms moving through. So for our viewers who were here in Burleson earlier, there is another round moving in. This is not that 70, 80 mile per hour wind, fortunately, kind of risk. This is going to be some heavy rainfall moving back in, maybe some lightning, maybe some 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, but these are not severe, at least for the time being. But there's going to be additional rainfall moving in here shortly. Into the same communities that saw some of these storms just a little bit ago. So it's not going to be that same significant round as we saw with that first one. There could still be some winds. We're clocking maybe some 30 mile per hour winds or so. But yeah, it's not like what we saw earlier. Okay, new information from the Weather Service, and they're talking about that storm. Now they're saying this is capable of 80 mile per hour winds, and they're saying that this is a destructive storm. Oh no, that's a delayed report. That's weird. Yeah, I apologize. Disregard that last report. I don't know why that came in late. That's at 9:30. Okay, so they did update another one. I guess this one came in at the same time, so I'm not sure if that was a computer glitch. This one is for 70 miles an hour. So disregard what I said just a second ago. Don't really know why the computer did that. But this one's still sticking around 70 miles an hour. And a new report coming in. Okay, so this one's considerable. And the good news is they just trimmed off all of Johnson County, portions of Tarrant County, even some portions of Dallas County with this one. It is more kind of a narrow box that we have here. It wouldn't surprise me if we start to see additional warnings issued for southeastern Dallas, portions of Kaufman County, and the rest of Ellis County here as this big ball of wind is continuing to kind of make its way further to the east outside of the current warning. As you can see, there's some strong winds moving near Trumbull, Ferris, and Palmer, even Garrett. And I'm thinking that they're going to go ahead and pull the trigger on another warning here shortly if this is still capable of 70-plus mile-per-hour winds. So heads up to these communities here. If you're in Crandall, Rosser, Palmer, Garrett, India, Ferris, and Trumbull, no warning here yet. Seagoville, Combine, Crandall. But I do think that they'll issue an additional warning for these areas here momentarily. Yeah, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot of reports, unfortunately. Yeah, and that wind is now kind of just creeping outside of the warning area. So I think they're going to go ahead and potentially issue a new warning here shortly. Someone's asking about Midlothian. So Midlothian, we had some strong winds here earlier. I'm sure you probably felt those just a little bit ago. Those were close to 70 miles an hour. Notice that strong area of wind that went through there. Storms are pushing out of it. Midlothian is almost out of the warning just because that activity's out of it. Further to the west, we have additional storms moving through, but this is not, at least so far, posing any sort of severe risk at the moment. So we'll be watching these. These are likely not going to be the same intensity. There could be some strong wind segments, but nothing like the 60, 70, 80 mile, or nothing like the 70 to 80 mile per hour winds with the first round. At least there's no strong winds with it at the moment. We're looking at mostly 30 mile an hour winds, so heavy rainfall moving in with this one, but the worst of it is past Midlothian at this time. Severe thunderstorm was updated, and they continue for the Dallas and Ellis County. That one was for 70 miles an hour. So we'll look and see. The Weather Service may momentarily issue that new warning I think they'll need for southeastern Dallas, the rest of Ellis County, and I would think at least southwestern Kaufman County, just because there's still some strong winds with that. And there we go, new severe thunderstorm warning, and that should be plotting here. That is for Ellis, Henderson, Dallas, Kaufman, and Navarro counties. So there we go. So new warning. They went ahead and kind of overlapped both of these and just covered a big area. Not everyone's going to see technically the same wind threat, just because the winds to the south are not as strong as the ones to the north at the moment. But notice those are starting to get a little bit of an uptick near Italy again. And so definitely a big area of wind that we're going to be watching. So I'm going to send a notification out here on our app real quick. And I'll also let you know just when this is going to expire. Dallas, Ellis. This is for Dallas, Ellis, Henderson, Kaufman, and Navarro. And this one goes until, and I apologize for the break in this, or the break of silence, just because we're posting this to our app real quick. And that is until 12:30 this morning. So we'll send that out here on the app. And like I said, this is in effect until 12:30. So that's what we got going on here. And still seeing some quite strong winds. So if you're in Palmer, Garrett, and Trumbull, this is going to easily be 60, 65 to 70 mile per hour winds. This is the most concerning segment of this storm so far. It's been that all the way back since Waxahachie, and it's going to continue to move off to the northeast. And I believe they said that this is moving at 35 miles an hour. So it's slightly faster than it was earlier. Some of these storms were moving closer to about 20 miles an hour earlier. Now we're starting to speed up just a little bit. So hopefully that should help with that flooding risk there. And I'll show you the 1 hour rainfall totals. Just look at how much rain has fallen with this over the last hour. Some areas have seen close to 2.5 to almost 3 inches over the last hour. So just east of Cleburne, some of these areas saw close to 3 inches in just a 1 hour period of rain. So heavy rainfall with those, and we're continuing to see some of those winds continuing to move well off to the east. And let's look at our hail core tracker real quick. Yep, still not anything significant with that, and that's some good news because, you know, the winds are one thing and they do cause damage, and it is pretty bad, but at least we're not dealing with multiple severe weather hazards, so that's some good news. Someone asked about Red Oak. I'll zoom in on this and show you Red Oak right now. Heavy rainfall for sure. The winds, they are probably at 60 to 65. So if it's loud outside, if it's loud outside, it's because we have these winds. Give it another 5 to 10 minutes, the winds will be moving out of Red Oak. But these are 60, 65, maybe even 70 mile per hour winds. So it's going to be loud. It's going to be noisy. There's lightning. There's wind. And I know wind can be unnerving, especially when it's loud and it's pretty gusty like it is with this 60 to 65, 70 miles an hour. So just make sure that you're inside and away from windows. Ride this thing out for the next 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll be perfectly fine. It's moving off to the east. It should be out of that area here shortly. You're going to continue to see that heavy rainfall too. But right now it's just heavy rain and damaging winds in that area for the next couple of minutes. Thank you everyone also for tuning in, and thank you for commenting on this post. Reports are appreciated if you can do so safely once the storm has passed. But also feedback is much appreciated too. We appreciate your comments, letting us know you're tuning in and interacting with this post. So thank you for the likes. Also, thank you for sharing these. Like we said, sharing not only helps us to grow our outreach on social media, it also helps us to reach as many people as possible when severe weather is occurring. So make sure you like, follow, and share our media. If you don't know as well, we have a free app on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Just look up Weather 225. You can download that as well. Let's do a brief overview. And let's show you what's going on with all of the area. I'm going to make sure that's lined up. So if you're watching in Dallas and Fort Worth, heavy rainfalls moving through portions of Dallas and Tarrant County, portions of Hood, Erath, and Johnson County there as well. We have a handful of storms well off to the west. These are going to be just heavy rainfall producers. There's quite a bit of lightning with some of the activity, of course, with the severe weather, but there's also lightning with some of these just to the west. But these are just showers. There could be some gusty 30 mile per hour winds with some of them, but this is just going to be heavy rain for the time being, and then basically a few rumbles of thunder. So we have rain across the area, but the most concerning segment is, of course, the one in the southern portions of Dallas County, Ellis County, Hill County, and into Kaufman County here. And we're keeping a very close eye on this. Sherry's asking no hail, and yeah, that's the case. There's a few things that we're looking at here, and one is we're not looking at any sort of discrete or cyclic supercell activity. When you get a supercell, it'll be in its own environment. It can go on for a long period of time. It can suspend hail up for a long period of time as well. You get better conditions for large hail activity. This is a complex, broken, kind of scattered complex of storms in the area. So there is no hail. The other thing is, when there is small areas of hail within the storm, keep in mind we're at the hottest point that we've been all year. So we're going to have some melting that occurs just above the surface. So the small hail that's falling, as it's falling, it's melting in that warmer layer, and when it hits the ground, it's either very, very small, or it's a raindrop that sounds like a pebble hitting the window. So it's not going to be that big of hail. So we're not really talking about a big hail risk with these. Fortunately, like I said earlier, we have damaging winds that it of course is going to cause some issues, but it's better than having multiple risks when we have that 3-inch hail and then we have 70-mile-per-hour winds, or multiple things going on at once. So we'll get through this wind, but believe me, when we have these large hail with these winds, that turns the hail into projectiles. So I'm very happy that we're not seeing that large hail mixed with these winds. It makes it much easier to get through. New update. Let's see what happened. Does not look. I guess they're just updating some wording with the warning with that. So let's go back to the velocity. Still some strong winds near Italy, Blooming Grove. These are probably 60 to 65, but the more concerning wind right now is going to be near Palmer. And Garrett, not really quite sure why that wasn't plotting until we zoomed all the way in. But Trumbull, Palmer, and Garrett, these are going to easily be 70-mile-per-hour winds. We're of course seeing some stronger winds than that, but we're looking at almost 3,000 feet up, so this is well above the surface. So we're not going to take that too seriously when we see that high up. We have to consider what it's translating at when we get towards the surface. And the winds, they're stronger aloft, and then that kind of translates down to the ground as it makes its way there. So we're probably talking 65 to 70 easily in these areas. So make sure that you're inside and away from windows. Let me look at something here real quick. Someone's asking, are we going to get a second round of rain? Yes. And here's our second round, actually. Notice all the way from Sherman, going through Granbury, Cleburne, stuff like that. This is not severe also. So we have this going on. It's not severe. It's just going to be an additional round of heavy rainfall. So this might lead to some flash flooding just because it's moving over areas that saw quite a bit of rainfall earlier. So we're watching that. But really, we're not anticipating. In fact, this one doesn't even have what we call special weather statements or anything like that for any sort of wind. I'm looking at the latest weather model output, and we're really just going to see this complex move through, and once this moves through, there's nothing else. So, oops, don't know why that did that. So we are going to get a second round of rain, but not of severe weather. And this is our second round moving through the Metroplex right now in Fort Worth down towards Cleburne. This is just heavy rainfall, maybe 25, 30-mile-per-hour winds. It'll move through. It'll drop some rain. All this will move out of the area, and then it should be gone. Then tomorrow, there's another risk, but it's not as big of a risk as it was today. This tomorrow is a marginal risk. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe it was a slight, just because there are going to be storms in western North Texas. I haven't looked too much at tomorrow just because we're focused on today. But let me see what they did for that for tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow is a slight risk for western North Texas, but that is once again just for hail and wind. So western North Texas is going to see another risk tomorrow, but tonight we have this first round moving through. This is the significant wind and even the severe activity, but further to the west, these are just going to be a handful of thunderstorms. and not really anything additionally severe. So maybe some 35 to 40 mile per hour winds, but right now this is just heavy rain. Let's see. We'll put this into this mode, and let's see. Maybe there's a strong pocket of wind near Rosser. Yeah, that checks out. Looking at our rotation tool, not necessarily for rotation for a tornado risk. This also helps us indicate where some pockets of maybe potentially significant wind are occurring. And the leading edge of this, that one is suggesting strong winds. That's not surprising me. We could easily see 70 to 75 mile per hour winds now moving into Kaufman County on the southwestern sides as storms are moving out of Palmer, out of Garrett, out of Trumbull, out of Ferris, out of India, or right over India right now. But these are going to easily produce 60 to 65 to even 70 to 75 mile per hour winds. Let's go back to reflectivity. We'll zoom out. We'll show you just an overall view just one more time. And once again, thank you everyone for tuning in, for your comments, for your feedback, stuff like that. Everything helps. Helps us with our broadcast. It also, when you share our posts and stuff, it helps us a lot. It helps us to grow our outreach, not only for awareness of our media, but it also helps everyone, or helps us reach everyone that we can. Someone's asking about Cleburne. I'm going to put the radar, pause it, we'll zoom in. So if you're in Cleburne, right now, you're going to get another round of activity moving in, but this is not that 70 to 80 mile per hour winds that we saw earlier. Maybe some 40 mile per hour winds, and definitely going to be some heavy rainfall. Notice the additional round right here. Some areas have been producing up to 1.5 inches over the last hour. So more heavy rainfalls on the way. Maybe some 30, 40 mile per hour winds or so as well. No, didn't mean that one. Maybe some small hail south of there. There is a hail core with this one. But like I mentioned earlier, we're taking some of these hail core readings with a grain of salt just because there's a melting aspect to the atmosphere tonight just because we are quite warm in some areas. And these are not going to be the full suspending updrafts that you get with supercells. So there could be some hail mixed in, but it's not going to be that significant hail. This would be close to maybe nickel, maybe some dime sized. In fact, I actually want to boot this up and show y'all something cool. Here's a tool that we utilize when we're doing these things, and I can show you the updraft. Actually, the storm. We're going to slice this into a 3D scan, and a lot of people love looking at this. I love looking at this. Here's our 3D scan of this storm. And I'm going to move this out of the way. This is a really cool tool that we use that we can actually cut into the storm and show you what exactly the updraft looks like. So here's the updraft within the storm, as you can see, shooting from the surface and making its way further up into the storm. That is suspending hail to about 35 or to about 35,000 feet. So we're looking at this. So the hail is going to be suspended in this portion of the storm that we see right in here. In fact, I actually might just I'm going to do this so we can cut out a lot of that. Actually, let me see if we can get another view. Not really sure why it's doing that. But anyways, that's cutting into the storm. That's showing us the updraft of the storm, and as you can see, there could be some hail with that as it's being suspended up into the storm, and maybe some 1 inch hail could start to occur with that one aloft, and it translates to about pennies at the surface. So this is just another tool that we love looking at here at Weather 225. It helps us with the forecast and look at just what's going on with these as well. That's also a tool that you're not really going to see anywhere else here in North Texas, by the way. So let us know what you think about that. We really love showing you this, but we know a lot of the outlets locally don't have that, and it definitely helps us deliver really good information because we can cut into the storm and we can see what's happening. It gives us a really, really good perspective. We also have some other tools too that are unique. So let's go back to the velocity, and moving into southwestern Kaufman County, these are going to be approaching still 65, 70 mile per hour winds. This one is persistent. It's not giving up. So unfortunately, still seeing that ball of heavy to potentially destructive wind moving into portions of southwestern Kaufman County. So this is still around 70 mile per hour winds, and that's what the warning is still issued for. Moving northeast or east-northeast around 35 miles an hour. So if you're in Rosser, Scurry, Gray's Prairie, Oak Grove, Combine, make sure that you're indoors and away from windows. Let's check out some of these to the south here real quick. Blooming Grove, Berry, and M House also heads up to you. There's some strong winds with these, with this segment moving in. We'll have to watch this one too, near Bono. If that hail continues to kind of trend with that, I'm curious to see if that continues, just because some of these have had a history where they kind of just spike up and then they kind of just die off pretty quickly. So we're watching that one. There's still a little hail core to it, so it wouldn't surprise me if maybe some nickel to penny sized hail could be occurring. The other thing we're watching, it doesn't look like there's severe winds, but they are a little bit stronger. These are closer to 40. New update. Someone said they're in Everman and the second round is upon them. Hearing thunder and rain again. Some good news with that one is that part of the storm, there's not a whole lot except for rain and lightning. So that's the second round. It's going to be some heavy rainfall for a couple of minutes, and fortunately, it's not what it was, or it's not like the storms earlier. Okay, so good news is the National Weather Service went ahead and downgraded. Still seeing some strong winds with this, but keep in mind we're still looking at aloft. I'm going to say 60 to 65, but the Weather Service is not thinking it's that 70 mile an hour wind that we saw earlier. They're going to go ahead and update the warning to 60 miles an hour. So they're also including the risk for some nickel-sized hail. So that's the update that they gave with that. It wouldn't surprise me too, just looking at just the hail cores that we have with both of these, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some nickel to penny sized hail moving into Bono. While the hail core looks impressive, keep in mind this is not that significant supercell updraft that's going to suspend 2 to 3 inch hail. This is going to be producing maybe 1 to 1.5 inch hail aloft, and when it falls, it's going to be closer to the ground as pennies once it gets through that melting phase with the temperatures. So it's going to be closer to the ground, maybe penny to nickel sized, but still small hail could be possible with that as it's moving through that area. All right, so like I said, fortunately, we don't have a whole lot of these weather stations putting a lot of reports out, so I can tell you there is all these there's all this wind activity moving through a large portion of the area, but unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of confirmations on the ground from stations to let you know if that actually occurred. We did see a couple of reports, so I'm going to put this into motion and show you. 65, that was close to Walnut Springs, that was earlier. Then after that, 65, that was close to Godley. In fact, that was in Godley. 60-mile-per-hour winds near Rio Vista. And then we heard some first-hand reports from some people watching that it was close to the Midlothian area that there was strong winds in that area just a short time ago there as well. New update, I just heard the ding a second ago. Yeah, that's just updating that severe thunderstorm warning that is for portions of Kaufman County. They updated that one, so it's no longer the 70-mile-per-hour wind. That is now the 60-mile-per-hour wind. So if you're just now tuning in and you're wondering, is there any more with this? There is. It's just not going to be the same significant level as the first round. So if you're in the severe thunderstorms on the south side of the metro, this first round packed a pretty significant punch with the strong winds. The second round moving in is a small complex of heavy rain, maybe some 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, and some penny to nickel sized hail. So it's not that same significant wind risk that was moving through. It's just going to be another round of heavy rainfall moving into the area. So we're watching this. There are some additional thunderstorms to the west near Breckenridge. These are not severe. This is just a couple of lingering thunderstorms in the area. Maybe some small hail with some of those, but they're not too impressive. Further to the east, of course, in the warning, that is the most significant portion of the storm. And I'm curious to see if they start updating the watch as this stuff moves through, just because they knocked out a bunch of the counties in the watch for Wise County, Jack County, Young County earlier. So once all this activity continues to move east, we should start to see some of these watches knocked off. In fact, some of these areas actually were, like I said, they were taken away from the watch here just a little bit ago, but models are indicating that this moves through and then that's it for the night. And then tomorrow we see additional storm chances for parts of the area that definitely I'll be monitoring. So of course, follow us for the latest information to stay ahead of the storms. Download our app to stay ahead of the storms, because we do this every severe weather setup. So we'll do one more round through here. We notice a bunch of the viewers are getting off just because of these storms are moving out of their areas. Before you head out, thank you so much for tuning into this. Thank you so much for all those who shared and liked this. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your follow and your like. It helps us out quite a bit, just your feedback and everything. So we appreciate you for tuning in. Let's look at the velocity here real quick. And yeah, it's still there. It's not as bright though. I'll show you. It was a much bigger ball of wind, and notice it's starting to ease down a little bit. So that's some good news. That's some relieving news, just because we did not like seeing that destructive wind on our radar that we were seeing much earlier. So it's been a very busy night, but hopefully we'll start to see these things kind of wind down. In fact, I should show this. Let me see if this is worth showing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll probably keep that. Let's go back to reflectivity. And notice too, this is not a solid complex as it was earlier when it had that big ball of wind when it was in Johnson County. This whole thing kind of split once it was over Ellis County, and now it's fully split again. So we basically have a broken line of storms from Lamar County all the way down through Hill County just about. So there's just broken segments. Really, the strongest activity is in Kaufman County and moving towards Corsicana, Waxahachie areas there. So we're watching that. But if you're to the north, we'll check those winds real quick. not a whole lot going on. Maybe some stronger winds trying to come together near West Tawakoni. We'll watch those carefully. Check our hail core tracker here real quick. Yeah, there's nothing there. Let's look one more time at this activity moving towards Cleburne. And we will check the velocities here. We'll check the base velocity. Still not seeing any sort of severe winds. These are a little bit stronger. And a little bit, I mean, it was earlier at 30, and now some of these are showing about 40, 45. So not quite severe, but maybe some gusty winds. Nothing like what it was earlier, fortunately. Let's check that hail core tracker, see if it's gone down or if it's any better. It's still there. I still think that is pretty small hail, though, occurring, just because it's not that big area that we were looking at when it was starting to strengthen earlier. It's kind of splitting up. So some small hail is possible with these. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. Like I said, I appreciate the feedback. Helps us to get better with these broadcasts. It also helps us to see who all's enjoying the broadcasts and finding these helpful. We appreciate everyone tuning in, and we're glad that we can help out with the severe weather coverage today. All right, so I'll do one big overview real quick. Again, just because there's not too much to talk about. If you're in the warning, it's going to be 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. Or actually 60 to 65. We're not really seeing those 70 mile per hour winds anymore. They lowered the warning here just a second ago to about 60 to 65. So fortunately, those winds are dying off. We'll check the widespread velocity view across the region. Like I said, maybe some 40 to 45 mile per hour winds in Johnson County on the southern sides, near Cleburne, if you will. Also strong winds near Corsicana there as well. They're in a warning in Corsicana. That's going to be 60 to 65. 60 to 65 near Rosser and Gray's Prairie. And in addition to that, it's going to be very heavy rainfall. Overall, let's look at the heavy rainfall across the area over the last hour. Some areas in Ellis County saw up to almost 2 inches of rainfall in a 1 hour period. There's also some areas with this second round that are producing potentially up to 2 inches an hour with spots. And someone asked, is the new activity moving? So the second round is going to be moving directly to the east. So this is moving through Tarrant County and Johnson County. So this is going to be moving to the east. And notice it was kind of larger earlier. The northern side of it is kind of falling apart just a little bit. The southern side is the strongest side, but overall it's going to be heavy rainfall, maybe some gusty winds and small hail. But this is moving directly to the east, and this is moving east around 35 miles an hour or so. So this will be moving through some areas that saw these storms earlier. It's not the significant severe weather that we saw with that first round. It's just going to be heavy rain, maybe some small hail, maybe some slightly gusty winds, but not quite severe. And then additionally, there is a little bit of activity behind that first one that may come together with it, but that's just also going to be heavy rainfall at times. And then a couple of just stray thunderstorms off to the west. Those are going to be, those are also going to be heavy rainfall producers. Let me take a look at one of our models, the Texas Tech. So what I'm now showing here is a model that we use here on the daily. It is the Texas Tech WRF model. This is what Texas Tech University has made. It's a pretty good model. I use it for a lot of stuff. This was this one throws me off because it's UTC time. Okay, so this was 8 o'clock. Okay, so this handled it pretty well. It did put a lot of activity further to the north than it did. So I'm not sure how well that did. But notice, this is what I mentioned, that round moves through. There could be a few lingering showers and thunderstorms overnight, but really all that activity goes away. And let me go to this is the HRRR model, and I'll show you what this latest one is saying. Actually, I'll go to the last one that was fully uploaded. All this activity moving through the area starts to die off once it moves off to the east. No activity the remainder of the night, maybe a few stray showers or thunderstorms too. And then as we get into the afternoon tomorrow around 21Z, which is about 4 o'clock, western North Texas starts to see additional showers and storms developing with that. Oops. Let's go back to radar. And let's go back to reflectivity or velocity here real quick. And right now, still not a whole lot to talk about. The winds are showing still 45, maybe 48 to 50 near Grandview. But, excuse me, it's not the same as what it was earlier with that 65, 70, 75, 80 mile per hour winds that we were looking at with some of those more intense storms. Let me check that update for the... This one in effect until 11. Okay, so the one for the eastern counties, this one goes for the next little bit. It goes until 12:30. So this warning right here goes until 12:30. So we got another little bit to watch this one, and then hopefully it will weaken enough that they're going to be able to cancel this thing, because this one has been a nuisance for a while. It's been causing problems. And not only am I hoping that it goes away, I'm sure a lot of viewers in the areas are also hoping that this goes away too, just because this one's been causing problems all evening. Let's check out this one near Berry, Blooming Grove. Maybe some gusty winds with that, but it's not the significant 70 mile per hour winds that we were looking at earlier. Let's go to the hail core tracker. Maybe some penny-sized hail there as well. Zooming out, let's go back to that one near Cleburne. And I mentioned earlier that hail core it looked impressive, but it probably was not doing anything major. And it looked like it was splitting, and it has split. So notice the hail core is not really there. I'm still thinking penny-sized hail's a possibility, but it is not a major hail core with that whatsoever. All right, so that's what we got going on with these. We'll check one more time with this. Batch of storms moving closer to the Corsicana. I am shocked that the Corsicana radar Facebook page, because for those who don't know, there is believe it's a C-band radar that is in the Corsicana area, and it is a privately owned radar, but they have a live stream that you can access or you can watch. Oh, actually, they just went live.
35 miles per hour thunderstorms may be severe with damaging winds and large hail. Then some thunderstorms may produce...
Okay, so they did go live, so that's cool. So the radar is actually right beneath this activity, so I'm also going to be looking at their stream too, just to see what their radar is saying, but yeah, it's pretty cool they went live. Let's go to the velocity. And I know we keep kind of doing the same thing over and over. I wish I had a little bit more information to hand off with like confirmed reports or stuff like that. This is just that kind of day where there's not a whole lot to pass along. A lot of those stations that usually record weather conditions, we're not recording a whole lot of the activity going on for some reason today. And of course, it's nighttime. It's a holiday weekend. We have Cinco de Mayo events going on. We have all sorts of outdoor activities going on across the region. So there's a lot going on. Not a lot of people are weather tuned in. So unfortunately, we haven't had a whole lot of the extensive reports and stuff coming in. But we are glad that you're tuning in to watch us here live on Facebook, YouTube, and Amazon Fire TV. And we love doing these broadcasts too because for those who don't know, we have a live weather channel 24/7 with weather conditions throughout the day, forecasts, and more. And the cool thing we love about this online weather streaming and getting to do this is we like to think that we are the future of weather broadcasting because we don't have any sort of programs that we have to interrupt. We don't have any sort of obligations to run something over severe weather information or anything like that. When we see weather occurring, all we have to do is just go live immediately. So we love doing this because there's access to us 24/7. We don't have any sort of paywalls or anything to get to any of this information. All of it is for free, and we get to go live with it when it's happening. So we love getting to do this. We love the online streaming side to weather because we like that this gets to help a lot of people out on social media and stuff like this. So thank you for tuning in, sharing, following, all of that good stuff. Make sure you download that free app of ours. We update we update the forecast every day. We update every individual graph. And the cool thing is we have exclusive stuff that you're not going to see anywhere else. So just to brag on the app, every time there's a severe weather risk, people like to ask, is there a hail risk? Is there this risk? What is the timing? The cool thing is we have a special button that only our app has where we put all of our forecasts into one. There's an exclusive hail risk to let you know what the exact hail risk is for the day. It lets you know the individual risks overall for the day. We have timing. We have all sorts of tools at your disposal. We have live radar that you can interact with and watch with us. And you can also stream our live weather channel 24/7 on there as well. So make sure you download that. You can find us on the Google Play Store and the Amazon Fire TV Store for our streaming. And we are also on Apple App Store. It's completely free. You don't have to put in your email or anything. Don't have to give us any information. You just download and start using for free and viewing all of our forecasts. All right, so trying to see what this Corsicana radar is showing for that one. There is a lot of rain with these. All right. It also looks like the Weather Service went ahead and canceled or cut a portion of that warning off on the western sides of the warning for portions of Dallas and Ellis County. So that's some good news there. These winds are starting to wind down. That's some really good news just because these winds have been causing issues all night. And we'd love for this wind to calm down and basically make its way out of the area here. So that's going to be moving out. Let's go back to reflectivity. I'm going to boot something up behind the scenes here real quick for tomorrow. Because I've seen there's a couple people asking throughout the night what the deal is for tomorrow. I'm going to put up the severe weather risk there and see if this system's going to boot up. Okay, so here's the severe weather risk for tomorrow. And here's all the counties that we cover highlighted here. So portions of our basically a majority of our western counties are in a slight risk for storms tomorrow. And basically I-35 to the west is under a marginal risk. So if you're just now tuning in, this is for tomorrow. So this is just a quick look because not a whole lot's going on right now. And there's a couple people asking about tomorrow. The overall risk for tomorrow, we'll go to the wind risk. It's going to be a lot similar to the past couple of days. Here's our hail risk. We do have a significant hashed area for both wind and hail tomorrow. So just think of today and yesterday and the day before we had all the storms in western North Texas. We'll be watching because some of these may come close to the metro again. Really, it's hard to give a lot of information out just because we've of course been looking at the forecast for today, keeping up with these, and focusing on this for today, and looking over some of the models, but not all of them for tomorrow. But this is just the risk that we have for tomorrow, and it's going to be a lot similar to what we had the past couple of days in the area. So that's just something to watch. But unfortunately, for some of our western counties that have seen a lot of activity over the past couple of days, they're going to have an additional risk for tomorrow. So the good news is these storms are looking a lot more sloppy. Even the one near Cleveland's not looking that good as it was earlier. So some gusty winds are definitely expected with the ones that are in the warning for the next little bit until this one dies out. But further to the west, I mean, even those storms that were near Mineral Wells, notice how they kind of just, they've been kind of stationary, but they're now not really that impressive. Let's look at the hail core tracker with those. Maybe some small hail, but that's outside of our coverage area. That's in Breckenridge. Did not realize we've been live for almost, or right at 2.5 hours with this. Hopefully these things can finally settle down here as they're making their way to the east. Let's check out the winds with this. Yeah, not a whole lot. Okay, so the warning for this that is until 12:30, so that's another 10 minutes for this warning. I'm curious to see if they go ahead and they extend this, or if they go ahead and let this get canceled. We're also watching kind of near Covington, just a little notch area that might be indicative that there could be some stronger winds closer to 50, but really, like I said, this one's not been that significant. Also, we're looking off to the side here. We cannot show it because we don't have the rights to show it. But I'm watching the C-band radar located right in Corsicana. See what that one is looking at with these storms, and it looks like it's a giant ball of rain, essentially, showing a lot of rain activity across the Corsicana area, Blooming Grove, Frost, Purdon, and M House. But yeah, quite a bit of rain activity. In fact, I'll show that one more time here real quick. 1 hour rainfall. Still quite a bit of rainfall with both rounds that are moving through. The first round had a widespread area of up to almost 2 inches of rain that fell over the course of an hour. Same with the one that was close to the community of Godley. Some areas are seeing 1 inch to 1.5 to 2 inches over the course of a 1 hour time span. So that's what we've got going on with this. Let me take off some of these. All right, so that warning, we'll stick with this for another couple of minutes, and then we'll probably end the live stream just because things are starting to die down a little bit, and we've been on for almost 2.5 hours, so we'll keep watching this one. So quick, what was that? Oh, okay, that's just a forecast discussion. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're not going away just yet, but I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who tuned in, everyone who liked and shared this, everyone for their feedback, for their comments, everything. We appreciate you so much. Your viewership means a lot to us. Your comments, your feedback, sharing everything. It helps us to grow. It helps us to better these broadcasts for the future. We do this every time there's severe weather here in the Metroplex, and thank you for finding our page. Hopefully you like the broadcast, you follow it. We'll probably be doing more of this tomorrow if there's storms in the area. So make sure that you follow. Download our free Weather 225 mobile app. We have a bunch of cool tools that we update every single day by hand. Another difference between a lot of our forecasts and what you see out there is we manually input our forecasts with all of it. The only thing that is an automated thing on the app is, of course, the weather radar, because we can't update the radar every scan. That would be impossible. And then national forecast. But local things, everything that's local with the forecast, we do by hand. We go over the forecast for hours looking over to give the best information to get as close to exactly what happens as possible. So we do all the forecasts. There's not any automated forecasts pulling the numbers from the models, because sometimes those can be off pretty badly, automated forecasts. So we like to put as much detail into our forecast as possible. We have a bunch of cool stuff located there, so make sure that you check that out for free on Amazon Fire TV, Apple App Store, and Google Play. And then, of course, like I said, thank you guys for tuning in, sharing, liking, and following this broadcast. Looks like we got another 5 minutes with this warning. Check it out one more time. Go to the velocity tool and just notice. Oops. And notice just the dramatic difference. This ginormous ball of wind that moved through the area. And now it's not really anything. I'll put this back into motion just to show you the overall progression of this. When it was back to the west of Fort Worth, look at all these just little segments of explosive wind that kind of lingered around for an area of time, and then it kind of just went away. That's what's happening here, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's just a little bit of gusty winds kind of lingering around Kaufman, but that to me is looking more 50, 55-ish this far out. In fact, the radar is only picking up about 52 with that storm. So that's what we're looking at here. The one to the south near Cleburne, not really severe either. That's about 40 to 45, even some smaller bursts of 50. But yeah, not like what we were looking at earlier. Do an overview real quick, and I'll put this into motion. For those wondering if they're going to get any additional activity, once this stuff kind of pushes out, it should be most of the activity. Of course, we have a couple lingering showers and thunderstorms west of that initial round, and notice outside of our coverage area, those storms are starting to go severe, moving into southeastern Oklahoma. Even approaching western Arkansas and the River Valley. Some of those are to the north near McAlester, Oklahoma, are starting to go severe too. So okay, so that southern segment, they just issued a new severe thunderstorm warning for, and that is for the Richland, Fairfield. This is for Freestone. We do not cover Freestone. and the rest is for Navarro County. And they are only warning for 60-mile-per-hour winds and nickel-sized hail. So still some severe winds occurring with this. We're going to be watching that, but fortunately, it's not that 70-mile-per-hour winds. All right, so the second round, that second round is going to be moving. It's moving to the east around 35 miles an hour. There's going to be a couple of these lingering thunderstorms to the west. Those are not going to be anything big. I mean, over the last little bit, they've kind of just been stationary, spotty showers and thunderstorms. Kind of just they're riding 180, but those aren't going to be much. This little complex that's right here through Johnson County, these are moving to the east at around 35 miles an hour. So they're going to be moving not the fastest, so there's going to be some heavy rain complications, maybe some isolated flooding occurring with those. All right, so we're gonna take a break here just because we've been on for 2.5 hours and there's not a whole lot to talk about. Some of these are starting to move outside of our coverage area here shortly. Just a brief overview, real quickly. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you download our free Weather 225 mobile app, like our page, share our posts whenever we're live in the future. Follow us so that you can get notifications when we're live with any sort of severe weather in the future there as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. It means a lot. Your feedback means a lot there as well. We appreciate you for tuning in, liking, sharing, all of that good stuff. What we have for the remainder is, if you're watching this, if you're in a severe thunderstorm warnings right now are for 60-mile-per-hour winds and nickel-sized hail. So that's what we've got going on there. Fortunately, we're not seeing those 80-mile-an-hour winds either. So thank you so much for your feedback and everything like that. If anything major happens, we'll come back live with it real quickly too. Just a shout out to our sponsor who helps us do these live streams and stuff like that. If you have damage from storms, make sure you call our friends at MyPro Construction and Roofing, just so you can know who to trust for repairs. So keep their contact down. It's right next to our radar banner. If you have any sort of damage that you need repaired, that's who we recommend for that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a fantastic night. Keep in mind, we do have additional storm chances tomorrow if we do not do any more lives tonight. And we're going to be keeping a very close eye on that risk for tomorrow. So make sure you stay tuned for those updates. Make sure you like this page for future broadcasts. Turn on push notifications and download our free Weather 225 mobile app. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you so much for watching and your feedback.